Well, welcome back to Lighting the Candle, a World That Works. Boy, are we working on that today. Our whole goal here is to bring you some interesting conversations for you to participate in and or just listen to. And at the same time, hopefully create some thought-evoking conversations in your own head or with the people that are around you. The ultimate goal is we do have a goal. Our goal is to bring empowerment. Our goal is to give people a time out and be able to make a choice in their life to be empowered and to be unstuck, if you will. So with that in mind, we have our panelists, and I'll just introduce you folks very quickly so we can jump back into the meat and potatoes here. We've got Ken, and we've got Lisa, and we've got Shelley, and we've got Vanessa on the line. If you've watched any of our other broadcasts, you know who we are. So what we're talking about, and it's kind of organically gone from a conversation about weather and how the weather might be used as a metaphor to describe what goes on in the news. And then it kind of naturally progressed into social media. And quite frankly, the news broadcasts wish they had our attention the way that social media does. And so we got into talking about The Social Dilemma, which is a Netflix special. It was actually created by people who have worked inside of social media for the last 30 years. One guy actually was the one who gave who designed the thumbs up like on Facebook, which opened up this whole new area where they could actually use Pavlov's dog principles. Let's get people to anticipate the next like that they're going to get. So they keep coming back and checking their posts to see if a person that they wanted to impress actually liked it, and so on and so forth. So to kick this off, we were kind of skirting around what people are doing with social media, and I do recommend that everyone watch this. It is insidious for all people that are on social media. And if you have Apple products, I don't know if Android stuff tells you how much screen time you had this week on each of the devices and all of that, and tells you it's up a certain percentage or down a certain percentage. They're really interested in that information and not for the good of you. They are really interested in providing you the next thing that will agree with how you already feel, that will allow you to continually be looking at something of that nature and at some point buy something online. They're putting you into a state of hypnosis that allows their advertisers to run things by you, and something that normally costs $169 that you can buy for $17.99 for the next 45 minutes, they make millions and millions of dollars off of that. So the whole idea here is that it's not something that they kind of stumbled on this whole ability to do that, and now it's all scientific. They've got whole engineering groups that are working on how can they lower your resistance to the next thing. How can they put you into a buying state or a state where you're going to be more addicted to being online than you were yesterday or the day before. And so that's why I say that it's, in my opinion, whether it's true or not, whether it's somebody's opinion or if these are all disgruntled C-level people from Twitter and Google and Facebook and all that, I don't know, but it's eye-opening, and it's a really great narrative. So with that said, can we kick this off now? And what are your thoughts on that? Vanessa, you had a lot of contribution the last time. Was there anything more that you wanted to share before we cut the cord on the last broadcast?
Yeah. So, well. I had started doing some research what started out was just a preview of the movie. I haven't actually seen the movie myself. I intend to. But I did go ahead and through my research, I came across some videos where people were reviewing the movie, and there's a lot of great things to say about it. And then I'm going to give you what I have so far. I haven't actually completed the research because I didn't know we'd be talking about this today. But it's no doubt it's a deep subject, and I agree. I think that it's a well talked about documentary, that's for sure. It made a big splash. I think it came out on Netflix, and the timing is just right. A lot of us have been thinking for some time if we're not already getting off of our Facebook, or we're not already getting freaked out by the fact that, it's called remarketing. I'm a marketer. I do copywriting as well as freelance writing. And so I understand, just studying people's psychology and getting, to use the words that will get them to take action on whatever the goal is of the media that we're creating. And remarketing is when you go to a website and you find, or you're searching for something, maybe perhaps to buy, but then you get off the website for whatever reason, and there's a little cookie installed in your computer, so now it can kind of track, and then it can also go ahead and now all of a sudden you'll see an ad pop up on the side of your screen, your email screen, for the same thing that you were looking at buying a day or two ago, or even a few hours ago. And so that has actually increased the number of sales that have been made just by simply maybe reminding us. And so, but getting back to the documentary, so there's one article here. I definitely want to hear what everyone else has to say, but I just came across this article. It's on a website called publicsquare.com, and it's got a trailer for the movie. It's talking about the movie, and it says there are it says AI is not that impressive. It says the social dilemma is talking about how it became an invention that is now manipulating our thoughts and our behavior. And that was one of the points of the documentary. But in the article, it's saying a really good point that, we are, AI is not a scary invention. Hang on just one second. I'm going to scroll up here to what there was. No one got upset when bicycles showed up. It's something that Tristan Harris says in this article. We're getting upset with social media. It says every successful human invention changes behavior individually and collectively. What happened when microwaves were invented? Suddenly we all have more frozen pizzas. Consumerism is the real dilemma. So anyway, this is just one of the articles that I came across in my research. I can share the link to this article, Bill, with our Facebook group page for anyone who wants to read about it more. But I have more to say. Okay, I'll just leave it with this, and then, like I said, I want to hear what everyone else has to say. But the fact is that the main argument is that the real dilemma is that consider the source of everything, including where we get our truth from. So if we're all flocking to see something that's calling itself a documentary, then that's fantastic. But it just shows that we're all eager and hungry and curious to have some answers about something which we feel is now making us go out of control and manipulating our behavior. And I'll even go so far as to say that maybe we're just looking, like any addiction, maybe we're just looking for something to blame for our behavior. So I realize it's a little controversial, but I'll leave it with this because we can maybe have a nice hot discussion going forward.
So what you've said, having not watched the actual broadcast and really giving us a what I like to call a kind of a bouillabaisse of all of the ingredients that other people are bringing to it. And the fact of the matter is that the bicycle in this particular instance is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence allows for human beings to let the computer decide what you need more of based on your own behavior. And it's insidious from the standpoint of, if you know that you're addicted to something, you have a choice in the matter to either do something about it or not. If you don't know you're addicted, this is just what you're doing, and you don't know that people are actually manipulating your behavior, and they're showing you things that you may be true, they may not be true, but they agree with what you already have been clicking on. And that being said, they're giving it more mass. It's creating all of the brushstrokes to make it real and make it have lasting ability. It creates stickiness in terms of your idea. It keeps reminding you of your last thoughts that you had the last time that you were online. I was out to breakfast yesterday morning, having a conversation with a woman, and we're talking about home values. And she asked me what I thought about Realtor.com and Zillow and all the other sites and everything. And so she picks her phone up and she goes, "Holy mackerel, Realtor.com is right here. We were just talking about that." So let me just kind of segue back, because I like to get Shelley involved with this. I know that you've got a pressing engagement coming up, and I love your thoughts on the movie. And it might have been you that mentioned it to me the first time that we ever talked about it.
Well, so what you were saying, and that, so they're tracking. And it's not just by likes. It's by voice. It's by maps, Google Maps. I disengage everything. I did prior, but even more so now after seeing that. Because they do. They want to know where you go. They want to know how far you drive. They want to know who you see. And they could probably map everybody's life. And we would have been like, oh, I forgot I went there. But the point of it is it is infiltrating into our thoughts and behaviors. It is, on some aspect could be like a reminder, or it could be maybe I want that again. But that was at the beginning. Okay. It has grown into, it's not even our thought process anymore. Right. They are telling us what we're thinking, not us telling them what we want or what we think. So it's kind of taken the reverse effect on the whole original idea. And when you watch the documentary, they will even agree. This was the best thing since sliced bread and bicycle. It was awesome. But there became a threshold. There became a critical point where it spilled over and there is no going back. So it was created out of good and out of marketing and out of, helping businesses expand and grow their sales. It was a good thing. But when it became monetized and other pieces were added to it, it flipped. It is not necessarily good for the human soul and the human mind for them to tell me everything, oh, go do this. Oh, this is the best. And this is that. We have to take our minds back, right? And for some, it's creating a new habit, which I did. I dropped off Facebook for, 3 months. I used to waste time and just looking and doing a few likes and maybe saying something. But that is time I'm never going to get back. And for them, it's dollar signs. For me, it's time lost. I do use it if there's something I need and I want, but it triggered for me, like, what is it that I really love to do? And I'm not caught up in everything everybody else wants to do. I've gone back to my sewing. I've, gone back to make and bake my Christmas stuff, which I would always do, but I would wait to the last minute. I'm now, halfway there That's what I used to do. And it allows me to then be in control of if I want to go on there or not. And if I want to look something up or a recipe or FYI, but it's not telling me what it is that I want. It's a great idea, Provoker. But again, it explicitly, and the gentlemen who were the creators and who worked on several projects to make this enormous monster will all agree that it was a good thing that has gone, I don't even call it bad, has gone out of control. And there is no reversing it. There's no reversing it because the almighty dollar and the monetary, how they've monetized it, if they were to switch it, would literally crumble. It's the big guys at the top. It's the shareholders, exactly what everybody was saying. So there is no reversing it on that end. On our end, but the problem is the young ones who've had this in their hands since they're 3, and now they are out of high school into college, and that's all they know.
Yep.
So it's kind of one of those, those who know and see this and can find a way to literally pull back our own reins, that's what you have to do.
Great thoughts. Lisa or Ken, you want to jump in?
Well, I thought I could to bring it back to the weather kind of thing too, because social media so we create our own storms by getting overwhelmed, or there's a whole new psychiatric disease of comparing yourself. I mean, it's like the ultimate, the Joneses, everybody's thinking everybody else's life is perfect and yours is not. And I just listened to something today where they say people are now doing things, they're going, well, I mean, not during COVID, but they would go on vacations or buy something fancy or do anything just to get that perfect picture to put on social media. So, it's got a scale of like, they are doing things, but they're doing them for the wrong reasons kind of thing. And I myself, I'm not, I've been in advertising my whole life too. So I kind of get a thrill, so to speak, of finding a way to manipulate my words into making people want a certain product or service. And I'm hoping I still do, but because this is all kind of interesting. But just to relate it back to the weather, we create our own storms, and we could do with it what we want. If I want to focus my energy on not paying attention, I don't watch the news. To bring it back to that, I barely watch the weather. I'll look at my phone and it'll tell me 14 days of rain, and then you could either fall into the poor me saying, now what am I going to do with myself, or look out the window, see what the weather is yourself, and accept the fact that it might rain. I mean, it's that kind of thing. It's where you put your energy too. So I know it sounds rather simplistic to me, but I think where your energy, where you focus, where you pay attention, which we talked about before too, is what's going to affect your life, and how are you going to deal with it. So bring it back to yourself. It doesn't have to be a complete manipulation of your being, although I know there's innocents out there that are being affected that way. But I'm not even sure. Like, I have a 17-year-old nephew too, and he's on the phone playing games than anything else, which is not good either. But he is not affected that much by advertising. I could tell you that much. Not a lot. He doesn't buy things except for games. So maybe there's one right there.
Well, it could be awareness too, I think, is what you're hitting on. It's awareness and the making our own choices, I think.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. We create our own storms with the energy and the attention we give it. But when we're not aware of it, right? So, or we've been, we're down this rabbit hole that we're kind of trying to get out of. It's being aware of what we have done to get there. Because if you don't know how you got there, sometimes you can't get out of it, or you're going to do the same thing.
And I've been on shared screens with people, watching them go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh my God, how did you even do that? Or why are you doing that?
There is no rabbit hole. Don't try to bend the spoon, you know?
I'm sorry, I've got to chime off. Wonderful conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure having you, Shelley.
I'll listen to you. Bye.
Mr. Ken.
So I'm thinking about Barry the bartender at the Willimantic Brewery.
Yes.
And I love that place. I love their food, and I've always been a beer enthusiast. Not lately, not the last few months, but and whenever I would go in and sit at the bar, as I developed a relationship with him, he always had a recommendation for me.
Yeah.
And I valued that. I valued the fact that he got to know my personal likes and dislikes and was bringing my attention to something that I may not know is there. And I think a lot of times that's, I've taught martial arts for a really long time, and most of the students that came to us did not come to us to learn how to fight, or even like we did huge surveys, like bully prevention even was at the bottom of the list. It was character development. It was, learning to be respectful, communication skills, learning how to be a better learner. And most of the people that came to us had no idea that that was something we could deliver on, because until we educated them to what we actually do in our classes, they had no way of knowing, So again, it speaks to what all you guys are saying about there are positives, and it's what you run into trouble with this kind of thing is what Vanessa said. It's the addiction. And so as you guys are talking about it, that documentary, all I could think of was that, Scared Straight, when they bring at-risk use in to a prison, mm-hmm. and they almost jar them into realizing this is where you could end up. So, and thinking about it, that's kind of how I viewed that movie. It was over dramatized to try to shock you into at least noticing you have an addiction. You don't know you have a problem with alcohol until your spouse leaves you, or you wrap your car around a pole, and sometimes you have, but now you've had a pattern interrupt, and now you have a choice because you've recognized that you've fallen into addiction, and we all have them. So I'm sure, I know lots of kids that are in their 20s, they'll actually lecture people in their 40s and 50s about the dangers of overusing their cell phone and being vigilant, and they're very aware, and they've got great BS detectors because they've grown up with the technology. So they're much more sensitive to manipulative, stuff, and they're kind of developing defense and immunity to it, defense mechanisms. So, so it's just, I don't know. I just keep coming back to, how do you help people recognize when they're falling prey to an addiction? As long as people are still doing drugs and smoking cigarettes, people will sell them. That's the and asking them to be ethical about it. I don't know that that's going to happen. But then you look at the counters to it, like DuckDuckGo is a search platform that it is a clean search platform. If you search, best omega vitamins, it's not going to be influenced like Google is by all the things you've searched before. It gives you clean results. So there are people out there that are thinking, okay, this is a concern more and more people have. I'm going to produce a product which I have to monetize, because no one's going to run that product for free. They've got to make money somehow. So either they're going to charge for the search engine, or they're going to attract advertisers who are going to pay them so they can make a living. Are you guys going to work for free? I don't think so. So somehow there's got to be compensation. So it's just really interesting how, you're right. I mean, AI is saving lives every day. There's so much powerful value being created, but it's a powerful tool, which means that the intention behind it, if it isn't the right intention, we have to be vigilant and then make choices that rob energy from the misuse of it and add energy to valuable uses of it.
Well said. Well said. I was an avid science fiction reader when I was maybe between the ages of 8 and 16. and I've read a lot of science fiction when I got older as well, but Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and some of the really greats, Asimov's prediction was that the robots would become so good at serving us that they would then train us how to be served, and that they would take away all of our choice. That's the whole sum total of iRobot. But the whole idea of that being physical beings, well, they look a little different than what was predicted back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s when those books were being written. And yet they still did a great job in terms of identifying how the weakness of human beings could be used against them en masse to enslave them. And at the moment, what we've got right now is everyone knows that social media is bad. Everyone knows they don't pay taxes. Funny thing about that, they have no rules about how they engage. There's no enforcement activity. They're just starting to talk about that now. And at the end of the day, they can't shut this off. It's not somebody somewhere is going to continue using the tools that have been developed up to this point. What I'm wondering is that in terms of everybody talks about the weather and nobody does anything about it. What do we do about this? How does this ever get to be a question that enough people could engage in and start to make choices for their own lives? Which I love what you said, Ken. And I think having a controlled environment, or an environment that you can get your arms around. But if you stop and think about, if you ever stood at the base of the Empire State Building,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
As you're standing there, I was putting mail, into a post office box, on the side of the building, and I happened to ask somebody who was passing by, how far is the Empire State Building from here? He said, you're standing next to it. This is the Empire State Building. It looks different from down there, right? You just can't, comprehend, or an old friend of mine used to call it grokking. I can't grok a building. All I could see didn't identify that with any memory that I ever had of what the Empire State Building looked like. It was a whole new domain shift, if you will. So I loved going to New York City because two things. One, I thought about all the people behind all those windows that were getting paid to do a job. I thought that was just really, really amazing. And the other part that I liked about it was I was completely out of my element. Having been raised for the most part in Eastern Connecticut, where Hartford's skyscrapers look like what they look like, and New York was completely different environment. And I actually had an anticipatory excitement and a fear, and I became addicted to being in New York. And that feeling that I would get driving up Madison Avenue at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it was just me and a couple of taxi cabs. So coming full circle to it is that what questions naturally fall out of the conversation that we're having about social media. And again, we've got a very strong point on the pencil by being able to have people sit and watch something in an hour and a half called The Social Dilemma. And that's what we've been talking about today. So anyone else with some final thoughts to sort of wrap up here?
I had a science fiction thought, because I love science fiction too. And I cannot remember who the interview was with. It might have been Philip K. Dick, who did a lot of cool short stories and stuff.
Yeah.
But the question was, why, with all the technology and everything, why don't any of the stories end in like this magical utopian society, where everything it comes together? This could be amazing. And he looked the interviewer in the eye and said, no one would buy that book. No one wants to read about the happy ending, they don't mind the happy ending, but there's got to be a lot of things have to happen that, spark us on all the extremes of, whether it's the fears or the joys or the adversity, or it was utopian and then it really wasn't, or, so it's just kind of interesting how, he said it could absolutely happen. It's just not interesting enough for people to engage in conversation about it, and it just, for me, it just keeps coming back to that. It's where's the attention, you know, and how do we, so that's the question, is how do we educate ourselves to monitor and manage our own attention in spite of our ingrained, you know, nervous system's needs to respond and react in certain ways, so that, you know, we feed the things that matter and we starve the things that don't.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
I just want to add to, because I read a book where these famous authors all retired in this one home in Maine, and they all decided to write a book together, and they would take turns. They would pass it among each other. So I think the five of us should write a utopian book.
Yeah.
And take a chapter and pass it back and forth, because I would buy that book.
People may now. You know, it's funny because I decided to rejoin Facebook, but my posts are long, which I know most people won't read. No memes, no pictures, no links, nothing, but just stuff that I'm hoping will allow people to think, you know, and that's it. So I'm making a personal decision to not ignore it or complain about it or be disgusted with it, which I was all those things. And instead I'll make a contribution, and, you know, and I'm actively looking for people who are treating it the same way. And then those are the people I'll connect with. And all of a sudden you take Facebook back. If Facebook would be thrilled to make money by all of us elevating each other. They'd be thrilled. The only reason they're not is because that's not what we want. So, you know.
Agreed. And there's a lot of conversation out there about utopian and dystopian and all that. But what people don't realize, these are not ends of the spectrum. It either is utopian or it's dystopian. It's like a half of a hair of breadth between one and the other.
Yeah.
It's more like the front of the hand and the back of the hand, as opposed to the distance between my two hands. Mm-hmm. And so it's either utopian or it's dystopian. And dystopian isn't bad. That's not the point. That's not the point. But it's being used to describe a culture in which things do not work systematically. And I don't think it's a great word for it, because dystopian is basically is a reminder of what we're really here for, and to strive to be at peace, and just to strive to live our own version of utopia. You know, the going to heaven on earth is an extremely powerful concept for people who engage that and bring it into their life every day. Yeah. Vanessa, would you like to wrap up for us? We're pretty much getting to the end of the half hour here.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of thoughts, but like you said, we're getting to the end of the segment here, so I'm going to respect that. I'm just going to say, based on everything else that everyone shared, I think that awareness is the most important thing, and we end up talking about this a lot on the podcast. Actually, it comes up every few segments. And big picture is, I'm wondering if the way to talk about a world that works is to observe it, to notice what's not working, to become 100% awake and aware of why, and then to just go from there. Because I do believe that the control is having control really is an illusion. We don't ever fully control ourselves, and we certainly don't control the events that happen to us in our lives. And I realize that might be met with some opposition, which is fine, because it's all about belief. So I'll just leave it there. I think awareness is the most important thing. And if something doesn't feel right, you know, our bodies are barometers to what's going on in our lives too. Yep. So if something doesn't feel quite right, we just need to look into why. First of all, though, we have to recognize that uncomfort. And I'll just say one more thing about social media. I think sometimes one of you said it, you know, we get into this trance state, and that's what anything that spurs that chemical dopamine in our brain, which helps us to feel good. Anything like that can get us into that trance state where we're not paying attention to where there's pain. And pain is where there's our body or our mind or something in our life calling out to us saying, hey, this is pain, there's got to be a change where there's pain. So.
Yeah, I think to sum everything up, things happen not as a result of things being good. Things happen mostly because things are bad. And quite frankly, that's a message that I think is really powerful to train young children in, that their choice of pursuing excellence has absolutely nothing to do with being satisfied with playing 8 hours of games a day, you know?
Mm.
And the whole idea of being actually being a human being and not somebody who's just a consumer and or is accepting game theory in place of growing their own mind. And so all of this is extremely stimulating and exciting, and we are at the top of our half hour at this point. I can't wait till we do this again next week. So in the meantime, we are lighting the candle and we're stepping off into a world that works. And y'all have helped me with a very troubling morning. And thank you so much for engaging these conversations. They are conversations and dialogues. Absolutely. Muchly appreciated. All right. God bless everyone. And bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.